Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, The CEO's Guide to Powerful Storytelling. Now, we've had almost 400 people sign up for today, and I think that's because storytelling is absolutely at the essence of what it is to be human. In fact, Yuval Harari's best-selling book, Sapiens, which I'm sure most of us have heard of, says that actually it's storytelling and imagination that is like the key differentiator to why we survived when other species of humans did not survive. And so it's really key. And I think instinctively we know it is through entertainment. Like we love books, we love films, but actually often it goes a bit forgotten when it comes to business. And actually, I think, and I believe our two guests today will also agree, that actually it's almost like this sort of magic secret weapon that if you bring storytelling into business, into pitches, into presentations, into town halls, you can captivate hearts and minds. So you're basically connecting not just intellectually, but you get your audience, you get your people, you get your teams, you get your stakeholders to buy in from a heart space as well, because storytelling is so powerful. So that is why we're all here today. We've got some amazing tools coming up with two absolute maestros of storytelling. So without further ado, I'm going to bring them on, Chris Hewitt, Philipp Humm, to introduce themselves.
Hi. Yes, hi there. As you can see on the label, Emma, thank you for the introduction. I don't know if you can hear me or not because I've got some connection issues. But anyway, my name is Chris Hewitt. I'm the Chief Executive here at Berkeley Communications. I'm also the Chief Storyteller, which means I get to have an extra long business card. But by trade, I'm a journalist and then crossed over to the dark side of PR and communications. And today I run a storytelling agency with offices in in Reading and in London, in New York, in Munich, and in Sydney.
Okay.
Amazing, very global. Thank you, Chris. And over to you, Philipp.
Hi, everyone. My name is Philipp Humm. I'm the founder of StoryLab. I'm based here in Amsterdam. And yeah, have been on this journey for quite a few years. It is not something that came natural to me. I was always the one that was terrified of public speaking, never told a story. But the cool thing is over the years, I learned the techniques to become pretty decent, I would say, to both. And yeah, super excited today to share all of the tricks that we have so that you get tons of values on how to craft magnetic stories, both at work, but also outside of work.
Brilliant. Thank you both, Chris and Philipp. So I'm going to kick off just to kind of bring us all here before we go into tools. I'm going to kick off with a couple of questions, which I think are really important. And the first is, I want to hear from both your perspectives. Chris, let's start with you. Why do you think stories matter so much?
Well, they matter hugely, particularly in the world of business, because I can say from prior experience, when I used to be on the receiving end of press material from PR agencies or in-house teams, and what I used to see, if you can imagine a journalist receiving, who is a professional storyteller, who may receive, I don't know, 300 or 400 stories a day, every single one of them, or certainly 99% of them, was self-congratulating puff, basically. And most of all of that material would go into the bin. And I don't really think it's a lot different today when we look at all the different media channels that are available to organizations and brands. I think that the tendency is to put out some, well, mostly boring self-congratulating puff, which is something that we need to stop doing. If we want to cut through the noise and we don't have a big budget, we all love a good story. We all love a storyteller. And if you want to cut through the noise, if you are in a B2B or B2C environment, then people will listen when they can see themselves in your story. So it's about recognizing that a good, well-told story is going to cut through the noise. And there's a lot of noise, let's be honest. There's more noise than ever before. And I'm on a mission to help businesses and brands do just that.
Emma, you're still mute.
Thank you, Philipp. Score my error. But yeah, no, I was just saying I love that. And I love the way you framed it as well, because I think actually for when we go in without knowing that stories are so powerful, we can think, oh, I've got to sell myself with self-congratulating crap. Actually, no, like we need to get right to the heart of, lighting someone up with our story. And that's so key. So before we move on, I'm just going to ask you another question, which is, because we kind of alluded to it, your mission at the end. Why does it matter so much to you?
Well, I guess I didn't really have any options because both my parents were journalists and I was brought up in a newsroom. I used to sit on Saturday mornings in my dad's newsroom and listen to all these journalists. And then, of course, in those days, what they used to do is there was no fax machine. It was either a telex, or in fact, what they used to do is all of these journalists would phone through their copy to the copy desk of the National Fleet Street newspapers. And as a kid, I would sit there amid all this sort of cigarette smoke, because that's what you had in those days in offices, and drinking my hot chocolate. And I would listen to all these journalists telling stories. And they were phoning these stories through to the copy desk, they were dictating news material. And at the other end was somebody who was just typing it all up for them. And I just sat there and listened to all these stories and saw how much fun they were all having. And the inevitable point was that I ended up going into journalism because storytelling and the family connection is such a strong one. But of course, as you go through life, as you go through school and you pick up stories along the way, you become, well, what strikes me is we've all ended up in various offices and workplaces and PowerPoint presentations, and we all turn to grey. We've forgotten the childhood memories that we had around storytelling. The formula, in my view, has never changed. The process of telling stories is within us, except that we just turn to grey when we fire up our PowerPoint presentations, and that's probably the best reason I can give you.
Bring the colour back.
Yes, exactly.
Love it.
Exactly.
Thank you. That's great. And really visual. So thank you. Okay, so Philipp, same question to you. So let's start with why, in your opinion, why do stories matter?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's one experiment that I like to share once in a while that I found absolutely fascinating. That was from Professor Cheap Heath, who was also the founder of Matestick, the author of Matestick. And he was back then a professor at Stanford University. And so he asked the students, one part of them, to deliver a speech on nonviolent crimes in the US. One part were supposed to deliver the speech, the other part to rate them on persuasiveness and conviction. After that, pause for a few minutes, but then he asked them, okay, I want you to take down your notes and your pens, and I want you to write down every single thing that you remember from this. Immediately, all the students got to work and putting down everything. He then, after that, collected all the material to understand how much do people remember. Now, here's the fascinating thing. Only 5% remembered any statistic, any fact, anything related to that. And that in a class at Stanford University, right? Some of the brightest people on this planet. But here's the fascinating thing. 63% remembered a story. And that just shows like, hey, if you want to break through the noise, if you want to become more memorable, especially in corporate, tell a story to really make it sink and be remembered, not just for a day, but a week, a month, a year later.
Brilliant. I'm also intrigued because both of you have used like really great storytelling devices in the sharing, just answering the simple question, which I'm looking forward to observing. I'll articulate them when we get a bit further, but yeah, it's lovely. So great stuff. So second question for you, Philipp, on a personal level. So why do stories matter to you?
Mm-hmm. For me, it started mostly when I lost my previous job. Back then, I was a product manager at Uber. I lost my job during COVID, and still remember actually on the same day that I lost my job, I was in my living room, scrolling like through random animal videos, just trying to distract myself. And at this one point, this ad pops up. And usually, like I hate those ads, right? I just click them away. I never look them. But somehow this time, I continue watching the ad. I'm like, oh, this is fascinating. And I watched through the entire ad, but it was a 27-minute ad. After that, I thought, like, how on earth did that happen? And so I rewatched it. The ad was by a guy called Scott Harrison, who's the founder of charity water, this nonprofit in the US. And that guy was just an incredible storyteller, just story, story, story. And when I saw this, I thought, wow, this is a superpower. Like I need to learn this. And that's when I really got excited in that topic.
Amazing. So interesting. And I love that story so much. And I think, yeah, like observations on both of you in terms of the telling of that story. I think everybody watching can see, like, actually, when you're using story as a kind of tool set to bring in, you can answer a simple question and make it riveting. So it's just lovely to observe. I think for me, because I'm going to answer my questions as well, stories matter for me because I think that there's a kind of, I'm going to use big words, desperate need in this world for more connection and more room to be authentic, and authentic in how we experience life, how we interact with each other, and also how we share ourselves. And for me, stories are a space where you can't help, as I said in my intro, to get your heart involved. Like, we don't listen to stories intellectually. Like, we watch TV, we watch a TV drama, and like all kinds of, you know, hormones are being released, and cortisol, dopamine. And so it's like we get involved. And I think that is so special because it brings our humanity, all of us, rather than this grayness, which, you know, could just be sort of frontal cortex, you know, cerebral space. But actually we're bringing all of us into the space when stories get involved. And you're triggering the real connections. And I often say that actually stories, and I'll bring in our tools later, go into getting the heart involved. And when you can't tell a presentation from your chin up, like all intellectual statistics, and expect your audience to be like, oh, heart opening, where do I sign? I'm so inspired. Like, you have to be prepared to bring your heart in order to get someone else's heart in. And that's just the rules of the game. So for me, you know, they matter because they're about humanity and they're about true connection. And so that's why they matter to me personally. It was really interesting, Chris, hearing your story about your journey. And I, back in the day when I was 16, wanted to be a film director. So my early years were about stories, and I used to write all these film ideas and then like feature-length scripts, and worked in film. Then I went to drama school, and I worked in theatre, and I worked in TV drama. So like I had the first sort of 15 years of my working life were all about story and entertainment. And then now moving it into this space of, for me, obviously communication and connection, it's like the two coming together. It's saying this does not need to be just in the space of entertainment where we're like, oh, frippery, you know, light, but let's come to work and be grey, like you said. So actually it matters to me because I think we need to bring our humanity everywhere, and stories help us do that.
Beautiful.
So we're now going to go into the next bit, which I know everybody has been excitedly waiting for, which is tools, sharing some tools. So, so Philipp, let's start with you this time. I'd like you to share with us one or two of your favorite, most powerful tools that the audience can use straight away.
All right. Yes, let's do this. So let's talk about what is the single most important thing when it comes to storytelling. And let me quickly share some analogy for that. Imagine you're watching this war movie. Just to be clear, I'm not into this, but imagine you're watching this war movie, and it starts with this helicopter shot all the way from the top. You see the soldiers, you see the tanks advancing, you see the bombings, but you're still far away. After a few seconds, you're like, dude, like, bring me down there, right? I want to be part of the action. I don't want to be up there in the helicopter. And then it zooms into the trenches. You see like the soldiers, you see the mud, you see the bombs exploding. You're part of it. Now, how does that relate to storytelling? Storytelling in business, but also outside of business, is often so lousy because people don't zoom in the moment. They stay in this very generic high-level helicopter view. So they say something like, oh, well, back then I had a very difficult problem, and then we did a few things, and then I overcame that problem. Now that is so boring. So the better way is to really zoom into the moment. So you say, hey, 3 weeks ago, I'm in this meeting room, my manager just pacing around the room. I'm thinking, what is he going to do now, right? Do you see the difference? Like, one is taking us into the moment. The other one is staying at this very, very high level. And so zooming into the moment is the single most important skill when it comes to storytelling. There are 3 ways that I like to use the most when it comes to zooming in. The first one is actions. And the actions is just, what are you doing? So bring in the actions. Are you walking? Are you typing? Are you breathing? What is going on in this one moment, right? So for example, you can say, 2 weeks ago, I'm in my apartment in Amsterdam, and I just closed my laptop, taking a deep breath. Boom, then you're already into the story. It's already starting with forward momentum. So that's the first one, actions. But the other 2 are actually my 2 favorite ones. The second one is inner dialogue. We as humans have thousands and thousands of thoughts every single day. A lot of those thoughts are like weird thoughts, anxious thoughts, hopes, dreams, plans. Share some of those thoughts to make it more emotional, to make it more vivid. So for example, instead of saying, oh yeah, I was very nervous, say, in this moment, I thought, oh man, this is going to go bad, right? Everyone will look at my presentation and think I put in an hour of work. Do you see the difference? Like it seems like semantics, but by sharing the thoughts, it makes it much more interesting. Or for example, instead of saying, oh, I was very excited, you share the thoughts and you say, I thought, oh, finally, right? I made it. Finally, this has come true. So you share the thoughts. For that to work, you want to share the raw, unfiltered thoughts, because in business, people often, they shy away from that a little bit. They're like, let me share my very filtered thoughts. Like, in this moment, I thought this represents a supreme opportunity. Obviously, no one of us thinks like that. And so when you share those thoughts, share the raw, unfiltered thoughts. If they're a little bit neurotic, if they're a little bit weird, perfect. It makes it even better. Should we talk about the third one as well, Emma? Or
yeah, I think I'm like actions, inner dialogue. Gotta have the third one.
Okay, gotta have the third one. Okay, that's the second. I use it in every single of my stories, every single time. I think it's actually the tool that I use the most. And then there's a third one, outer dialogue. That one is so easy, but it makes such a difference. And that is, oftentimes our stories will have more than one person, right? It might be a boss, it might be a customer, it might be a friend, a family member. And so if you want to make your story more vivid, share the exact words that were said in that crucial moment of the story. So for example, instead of saying, oh yes, my manager was very disappointed with me, say, in this moment, my manager looked at me and said, Philipp, what was that? You were all over the place. Or for example, instead of saying, yeah, the customer was very satisfied with our work, say, 3 weeks later, my customer called me and said, wow, thank you so much. Like, I've used those techniques and I've just closed my largest deal this year. Thanks, Philipp. Again, do you see the difference? It might seem like semantics sometimes, but it makes such a difference. So anytime that you have a story with another person, share the exact words of that moment. It is so powerful, and especially for everyone that is in a more customer-facing role. Like, outer dialogue is the number one technique that you can use to bring a success story to life. Like, really, that's the number one tool. Nothing is more important than that. So yeah, those are the 3 techniques: actions, inner dialogue, outer dialogue, and all of them help at the end to zoom into the moment.
I love that. And I think for me, what really stands out is that, well, this idea of zooming in, and I love how you set it up for us with, I mean, I saw Apocalypse Now. I think it was I saw a film basically. And this idea of like actually going from vanilla, which is when we're zoomed out and we're in the generic and we're not wanting to share, to going to, you know, again, the theme of color, which I didn't see coming for this, but it's like we bring color in by actually diving in and sharing what actually happened. So yeah, I love that. Very powerful. Thank you. Chris, over to you. And
yes. Unmuted. There we go. Yeah, I mean, for me, if you think about it, what is it that actually makes a Hollywood movie a blockbuster, or what keeps you turning the page of a best-selling novel, or what keeps you glued to your seat at the cinema or theatre? There's a bunch of rules that these professional storytellers use, and what we've done, and the tool that I favor, particularly when we're helping businesses articulate their brand narrative. I call this the North Star narrative. What is it? What is the top line message you want people to hear? Or if you want to launch a product, to the market, you've got to be thinking, first of all, drama. Where is the drama in your story? In just about every book, film, theatre, play, any production you've ever witnessed, at the heart of that narrative is something going wrong, right? There is a core drama. And when we try to bring this into the world of brand and business, everyone gets a little bit nervous. There's no drama here. We don't want to do that. Well, if you don't, you won't have a story. No one's going to listen. And if you want people to feel something, then you've got to be thinking about bringing drama into your narrative. How do you do that? Well, the first thing is recognize that your product does solve a problem. How do you dramatize that problem? You dramatize it by talking about the consequences of the problem. And once you've got the consequence of the problem, then you can use the techniques absolutely that Philipp was just talking about, because that is what brings it to life. That's what positions the story in your heart. So when we're trying to build out a narrative for a client, think drama first of all, but also we use a 6-part story formula, which is basically very much a cut down version of the hero's journey. But we start with number 1. Who is the hero in your story? The big mistake most businesses make, or most brands will, or for a product launch, for example, they'll position the product or the business themselves as the hero of the story. Stop it, right? The real hero of your story is the audience that you're trying to reach. So your customer, your employee, the prospect, whoever it is that you want in the room or that you're trying to reach, position them, first of all, heart and center of your narrative. They must be able to step into your story and feel that they're part of it. The second part is the mission. What is it that our hero wants? And don't make the mistake of thinking that they want to buy your product. What they're trying to achieve, what is the daily battle that they're facing every working day of their lives? It could be a competitive threat. It could be not having enough skills, not having enough budget, any number of things that they're concerned or worried about along this mission. What are they trying to achieve? So if we could show that we've built that into the narrative, then the audience will feel that you've identified with them. The third bit is, and this is the fundamental part, back to the drama again. Who is the villain here? Or what is the villain? Something is preventing your customer from achieving their mission. And that could be, well, there's one of 2 things. There's the inner fear, which could be just a lack of knowledge or nervousness, or they don't understand the problem. Whatever that is, there's an inner fear, but there's also an existential fear, which could be a competitor, which could be any number of existential events, but they're facing one big obstacle. And that one big obstacle, don't give us several obstacles, just give us one big thing. And if we know what that is, then it is very likely that your audience, because you've positioned them as the hero, because you've shown you understand their mission, but more importantly, you've actually now focused attention on the biggest worry that they have. This is when we start to come into the story. Now, we're 3 parts into a 6-part story, and you haven't even mentioned the name of your company, and that's fine, because the audience is with you. This is where the 4th part comes in. Every hero has a guide, has a mentor, someone who's going to help shine a light on the pathway ahead. The Baloo or Bagheera in the Jungle Book, helping Mowgli through the jungle. You know, if you want to position your brand or your business, position yourselves not as the hero, but as the guide, as the facilitator, as the expert who's going to take you by the hand and walk you through the jungle of options ahead. Because I don't mind you then, because you're kind of native to the story. You're not selling, you're guiding. And to me, and to when we're using this in helping launch products or build out brands, we're just saying to our clients, stop being the hero, start being the guide. The 5th part is the journey. And this is where you can bring in, what is it like to work with your organization? What 3 things will happen along this journey to the 6th part of the story, which is the ultimate resolution? And again, you know, take them on a journey, the rising and falling tensions, how your product and your services will actually enable them to achieve their mission, to slay their monster, to get to the sixth part of the story, which is the resolution. And that resolution, it isn't just job done. Resolution is your higher purpose as a brand or as a business. What do you really stand for as an organization? Or even better, what do you stand against? You can build drama into a brand narrative. But there has to be that ending, that feeling where I want to do business with you because you've built that affinity. So the six parts, who's the hero? The hero is the customer. Hero to mission. What is the mission? What is it they're trying to achieve? Who is the villain in their world? What is trying to stop them? Where do you come in as the guide or the mentor? And what does the journey look like that you take them on? And finally, what is that big higher purpose, the resolution? When we're trying to help shape a product launch, build a speech, build a narrative for any brand or business, that's the formula, that's the tool that we use. But the biggest one, the one that people always forget is that drama, is the villain. You've got to have that loud and clear, and you've got to be sure that that is the villain that your audience is worried about.
Yeah, that is so powerful. I love it. And I love this idea of like dumping that assumption that we have to be the hero if it's our business. It's like, no, it's brilliant. Your customer is the hero, and then suddenly they're the protagonist. And that move from, what do you say, stop being the hero, start being the guide. Like, that's just absolute brilliance. I love that. I think that is so powerful and also so useful, hopefully for all our listeners. Like, I've just found that brilliant. So thank you so much. Okay. I'm going to give a tool because I think that will be useful for everyone as well. And then we're going to move on to the next bit. Of course, we could dive in, and there's more I want to say, but I think we want to get to the audience's questions. So my quick tool is called the meal plan. And it's interesting because it's what we like about it and clients like about it is that it's very, very simple. And actually it connects with some of the stuff that you would be doing in your stories and also saying. So the meal plan goes like this. To have a nice, nutritious meal, you need your protein. So your protein is your objective. What are you trying to achieve from this presentation or from this pitch or from this town hall? What do you want to do? What are the 3 things that you want people to take away? And we, like you said there, Chris, we're quite clear about, don't aim for 10 things, don't aim for 7, just 3. Keep it simple because people will remember 3 things. So those are like your 3 pieces of protein. Next, you have your vegetables. So the vegetables are the vitamins, the nutrition. And this for us is where that heart piece comes in. So they're basically the values. They are your why. So a bit of Simon Sinek, like, know your why are you doing this? But bringing in values is like, why does this matter to you? And that's where you start to have room for the heart connection, because you have to share genuinely. And also that opens up space for telling the stories within that. This is why it matters. It matters because my grandma, was an immigrant, or, it matters because I had to learn piano for 5 hours a day every day and I learned discipline. Whatever it is, there's going to be why. And within that, you can share stories. And so sharing your values is really, really key. And then the next piece is spice. So we've missed out carbs in this neat, simple, nutritious meal. But that bit of spice is about saying, right, this is where you bring in your unique perspective. So interestingly, Philipp, this is our take on the zoom in. And that's where you can do spice in terms of what you see. You can do spice in terms of what you think. You can do humor. You can even do physical spice. Spice, if you have a 30-second pitch, could be the difference between saying, that's great, or it's such a great product, or to, that's compelling, or that's magnetic. Or that's insightful, like words that have nuance and go and drop from the vanilla to the, multicolor. So that's our very, very simple meal plan. And what we find, and the tools at London Speech Workshop are all about simple, because we like to just keep it really simple so that people can remember it. And so what we find is that idea of just going, okay, I'm prepared to bring my values in to a chat about, our team social, or why we should use a different printer, or how I want to do a different project management tool. Once you bring your values in, you get buy-in, because you're saying, well, this is why it actually matters to me. And that is so powerful. And then the spice, of course, allows for that lovely uniqueness, that freshness of story. So that is our simple tool called the meal plan. So we are now on to the next bit, which is our audience. So our audience have, I believe, put in some situations. Wonderful. Thank you, Will. He's put this up. So what we're going to do here is I'll read this out, and then I'll put it to each of you. And I just want you to, in a speedy kind of 1 minute, give them how you would help with one tool. So Pablo, thank you so much for sharing. I work in management consulting and frequently present to senior clients. I spend time preparing and practicing the presentation, and I feel that in general, I do a good job at the delivery. Where I struggle is when there's pushback or a change of direction, and I have to think on my feet, how to communicate with confidence in those situations of stress. So, Philip, I'll go to you first for this one.
Yes, very relatable, Pablo. I used to blank out in a lot of those situations. I was also actually a consultant earlier. Now, there's one thing that has helped me by far the most, and I also realized that this is the number one thing of building confidence. The most confident people are the ones that are okay with whatever happens. If things go wrong, they're like, I'm good, I can handle that. That's the attitude that they have. And the number one tool to get there is through improv. Improv can come in a few different forms, right? It can be improv theater, where you're playing together a scene with a group, where you're on stage and improvising. That usually helps you a lot to think under pressure. And the other one is improv just by yourself or with a friend. And then you just pick a random topic. You're like, why we should colonize Venus. And then you give a speech on why you should do that. And so I would say improv, just giving speeches off the cuff by myself, has been for me the single most important thing to become a better speaker, but mostly to think under pressure. Because when you get comfortable there, then whatever comes up, you can handle that.
I love that. That's really helpful. Thank you very much. So Chris, over to you.
Yeah, it's easily said than done, but you need to get out of yourself. Okay, I think and one of the ways that you can do that is when the question comes to you mid-presentation, pause, take a breath and relax. Okay, because just know what's going on. There's a tendency just to leap in and try and answer a question, and all that is doing is increasing your anxiety. It is an anxious moment. And I've been doing this for donkey's years and always still get nervous. And so, always be mindful of what is going on by, first of all, just pausing, taking that deep breath, and now get out of yourself, get into the person who is asking the question. Because all they're doing, like you're doing right now, is asking the speaker a question because they want the knowledge. And what you're doing now is, if you can get into the mindset that you are giving them, you are helping them, you are the mentor, you're the guide in this situation, but you are the knowledgeable one here who's helping that person, and try to tell yourself that you're just helping that person. And everything becomes a lot more natural, and particularly if you just slow down and take a deep breath, you will remember where you are in your speech. Okay, because when the anxious brain kicks in, it is designed to blank out your short-term memory. That's what fight or flight is, right? Fight or flight is about forgetting everything else and running. Okay, that's what's going on for you right then. So that your brain is shutting down, and dealing with that particular moment of anxiety. So it is the deep breath, mindfulness. Get out of yourself and get into the person who's asking the question, and you'll find you'll get back to your speech.
Brilliant. I love that idea, Chris, of being the guide, seeing yourself as the guide of that person. So our tool there that I will offer is, we call it catch the ball. So if someone asks a difficult question, you see it as a ball, and it can be a ball sort of thrown quite aggressively. So we catch it, we put it on the table, and we take a breath. So that's, like you were saying, Chris. So that's the first thing. It's like, okay. And then we can look at the ball. So you can, with that, within the metaphor, you're totally changing the energy. So you're not in it, pinning it back and stuttering and, red face. We're just going to get the ball and be like, oh, okay. Really good question. You acknowledge the ball. Like, oh, I'm so glad you asked. What a great question. All of that is like calming your system, giving you control of the situation, changing the energetic dynamic. And now you've kind of acknowledged the ball, acknowledged their question. That's also how you can slip into that guide space. And then we have a different thing. You can have a few different options. So you can give the ball back and say, it's a really good question, but actually I don't have the details with me to answer this right now. I'll go ahead and, take further actions and send you an email. You can offer a new ball. I love that you're looking at this. So great. I want to actually bring in this idea because I think this is really where we need to explore. And you can also just investigate the ball. So you could say, okay, like, let's crack this open. I think there's a few different areas to explore here. I'd like to start with the first, and you can just take it steadily. So essentially make it your ball, stay with the metaphor. But it's that first piece of taking ownership energetically, and then you actually have choices, and you don't need to be at sort of the beck and call of the ball, which sounds really weird. Brilliant, but very good question. Thank you, Pablo. So on to the next question. So Catalin Zanatti, we're working on various objectives at work which were defined by leadership, and we would like to inspire the people working on these objectives on the ground. Currently, there is a disconnect, and these objectives may not be particularly engaging. How could we use storytelling here better? So just to clarify, so we're working on, or will you bring it back up? So we're working on various objectives defined by leadership. We'd like to inspire everyone with these objectives. The people in the teams obviously aren't quite connecting. How can we use storytelling to share these objectives better? So let's start with you, Chris.
Yeah, without knowing what those objectives are, I think that's a crucial part of the question. But I would be thinking about how you can build metaphor into a narrative, into a situation. And the narrative generally would start, as I mentioned earlier, where is the drama in achieving that particular objective? So I without knowing what that objective is, so we would need a bit more detail around that. But there is a barrier to achieving that objective, And I would be urging you to think about where are those barriers, and what is the big barrier that everyone is perhaps feeling but not actually saying. So what we want to try and do is interpret this by understanding the problem or understanding the objective, dramatizing that problem. And once you've got that central drama, then you can start to build a metaphor or build a story around it. So for example, if it is about a salesperson who is, I don't know, very nervous about, is nauseous every day about going into a presentation, there's got a big event coming up and they need to improve their presentation skills. What is it that you can give that individual and name that individual, get into the mind of that individual and give them the tool that will enable them to overcome that barrier? So for me, it's start with the drama and then build characters. And coming back to the formula that I talked about with the mission, the drama, and the journey, I think that's really what you want to achieve. But without knowing what the objective is, it's hard to be precise.
I think that's a great answer, dramatizing and bringing that drama in. That's brilliant. Thank you, Chris. Philipp, over to you.
Yeah. Behind every objective, there has to be a pain point or a problem that we are solving. Let's say if you say, okay, we want to reach 100 million people by 2027. Why? Like, what is the big why behind it? There has to be a pain point behind it. And so if you want to tell a story there, think of yourself almost like telling this founder story of an entrepreneur. And so you're thinking like, when was the moment that we saw that, hey, that stuff, we need to work on this. This is so fucked up right now. Like how it is, how the current state is, we need to work on that. We need to change it. And so I would say every single one of these objectives should have this one moment in the past where there was a specific problem that you noticed in the market and work with the customer, and then zoom into this one moment. What was the problem? And then when you bring this one moment to life, then there is this emotional hook behind it, because then we're like, man, we got to work on this. Like, we got to change this. And so I would say zoom into a moment. Zoom into one specific moment, and then almost think of yourself as a mini entrepreneur, right? Let's say if you pick founder of Airbnb, I don't know the exact story around it, but they probably have this one story when they're like, hey, okay, I'm sitting here in my apartment in San Francisco, I'm sleeping on the floor, boom, boom, boom. And then I see like, hey, why is there no solution for this? Like, we got to work on this. Like, how's this 2022 and there's no solution around this? And so you want to take us into one specific moment where you realize that there's a problem that needs to be solved.
Brilliant. Great. I love that. And I think that's right. It's like the drama, getting into the problem, zooming in. I think I would share that we have something called stepping stones, which is, so you have choices, but basically you could do past, present, future to get the drama that Chris and Philipp are talking about, problem, solution, benefit, situation, action, result. So you get some structure through which to prove that this objective is an objective worth getting inspired by for your team. So I would start with that to kind of order the thinking, and then you have to bring in the values and you have to bring in the spice, because otherwise it doesn't matter. So it's like your protein is your objective. You need to structure it. And Chris and Philipp explained like why you have to have that story there. So past, present, future, one of those structures. And then why does it matter? And not just why does it matter to the values of the company, but why does it matter to the leadership team as individuals? And then bringing in your unique perspective on it is also going to be helpful. So that's that zooming in. Really good question. So I'm going to challenge us, because there are so many lovely questions and not so much time. I'm going to challenge us to do what will I call it? A clinic. But it's like, I want a 1 minute clinic. So we're going to see how many we can get through. So we'll have a question come up on screen, and then it's like the 1 minute version of a tool. And I'm going to give a big thumbs up when your 1 minute is up, and we'll just do 1 minute each, so we can get through a few for a bit and see how that goes. So that's your challenge, guys. Share your tool, but you have 1 minute. And let's bring up the next question. So Marina Agia. How to communicate complex technical problems to senior execs that need to know where these problems are far from their areas of knowledge. So let's just read that again. How to communicate complex technical problems to senior executives and they need to know where these problems are and they're very far from their areas of knowledge. Okay, so it's like that translation of complex ideas with people who are like, I don't know this stuff, but they need to understand it. Okay. Your 1 minute starts now, Philipp. Over to you.
All right. For this, I would do the following. I would zoom into the specific moment when you discovered that this is a problem. So, for example, you are in this presentation and then you say, hey, 3 weeks ago, I was running this analysis. And on this one sheet, I just see this massive drop. And I thought, how the heck did that happen? Like, this is impacting our entire business. So today I'm going to share what that drop is, how it might impact our business, and how we can prevent that to take over in the future. And then, boom, then you have, for example, all the attention of those folks.
Brilliant. Love it. Chris, over to you.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think what I would do is think really hard about what I call the once upon a time moment. This is the opening scene to every great story, the moment where you plant the audience, this individual who may not be understanding the technical issues, but if you were to paint a picture, so think about your opening line. You could open the line with, I want you to imagine that you were in this situation. Just picture this now. Okay, so this is because if you understand the technical issues, what you're trying to do in this moment is to invite the audience into your story and plant them in it from the very beginning. Okay. And once they're in and they understand the situation and they understand the problem, again, you can be using a metaphor for the technical problem, but you must crucially keep it really simple. So if you say, right, I want you to imagine that you're sitting in a room and then all of a sudden this happened. Whatever that event is, it's a metaphor to bring your audience in.
Brilliant. I think that's great. I mean, there's little to add here. I think the solution to this problem is entirely stories, like Chris and Philip have said. So I will articulate it in a slightly different way, which is pain points and aspirations. Like what is the human hope or the thing that is going to be achieved that's sort of like, yay, or what is the agony that we're moving away from? And then find that, you know, that can be a way of accessing the story. And if there isn't a real story, make one up. But like, get to the pain, get to the hope, and then you can bring in the tech around it. But at the heart, you have to have a human story, because if you just get tech and, like Philip illustrated right at the beginning, and sort of numbers and stats, people who aren't into that will just be thinking of their, you know, shopping list or, you know, the latest Netflix that they've watched. So yeah, story is at the heart of the solution to translating technical into compelling articulation of these ideas for non-techie people. Great, well done, we did it. Let's do one more, and then we're going to do our next bit. So, Hailu. Refugees and asylum seekers bring with them a lot of stories, but lack the space, passion, the skills and techniques that go with storytelling. Yeah, there isn't a question here. It's just such a true statement. So yeah, I'll sort of kick that off. I think that I've often felt that. I think as humans, we can be so inspired by stories, particularly when you have stories of the underdog or stories of, you know, people coming through real life, very challenging situations. And there've been, I watched something on Netflix about a swimmer who became an Olympian swimmer who was a refugee, and it was just so heart-wrenchingly beautiful. So yeah, I agree. And for so many refugees and asylum seekers who've made their way here, it's rammed full of unbelievable stories. So if the question is, you know, how do we support refugees to share it, and where can they share it? I mean, I think I've got that question too. And actually, if anyone here watching is part of that from London Speech Workshop, like we'd be totally up for doing some pro bono work, supporting on, you know, helping refugees tell their stories. In terms of where they can share it, I don't know, but I think it's important. So yeah, really nice point raised. Philip, anything to add from you?
Nothing really to add.
Chris?
Yeah, I think the plight of refugees is when we're telling the stories, it's not about the group or a mass of people. It is all about the individual stories. And for us to get our stories across, I would urge anyone to share their personal drama and what they've been through to face where they are today. I think it's the individual stories that really matter, rather than just telling the broader picture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
So it's amazing how fast the time flies. So I think we'll go on to just general questions for 5 minutes. Then we're going to have a few minutes to wrap up. So let's have some questions. Given that English is not my first language, how can I improve my tone and voice when telling stories? Who would like to take this one?
I can take it. What I realized is that oftentimes we obsess a little bit too much about it's that our English is not good enough. For example, I'm German, right? It's not my mother language. I would actually say that it's an advantage when it comes to storytelling if it's not your mother language, because you want to speak in the simplest way possible. And so I would encourage you, rather start getting more comfortable in speaking. Don't think about your voice. Don't think about your tonality. All that stuff comes automatically the moment that you start enjoying yourself a little bit more on stage. So do some improv, have some fun exercises, do a lot of weird stuff to get you out of the comfort zone. Because the moment that you feel comfortable when you speak in public, voice, tonality, all that stuff will automatically come to places. So I would not recommend to work on that, just because I don't think it's a problem. I don't think it's a problem.
So that's really interesting, Philipp, and I love that, and I also love how you are demonstrating that it's not an issue for you, because you bring so much tonality to your voice and bring the story to life through your voice, actually, which I was really noticing before. I think from us, because obviously we do accent softening as well, and philosophically, our position on accent softening is nothing to do with saying an accent is bad, or, that's why I was like, I will never call it accent reduction, because this is not reductive. Actually, the idea is that we're very key on going, your accent holds your identity. It's beautiful. It's a part of you. What you need to be able to do is share all of your brilliance through your communication. And if ever at any point your accent is getting in the way, and that can be through a mispronunciation or a sound that sounds like another sound, so people aren't understanding, that needs to be sorted, because we don't want there to be anything getting in the way of your brilliance getting out. I would also say we have this exercise with Jabberwocky, which is this very famous English poem. It's a nonsense poem. And I love this exercise. It was one of the first ones I created about 12 years ago or more. But basically, we get someone to, I don't want to give it away, actually. The key thing of the exercise is that it is not about perfect understanding or perfect articulation of a word, because actually you can kill someone. An English speaker who articulates every word absolutely with perfection but speaks like a robot and without passion, it doesn't matter that you understand their words. You don't want to listen. It's about sharing, like bringing energy and passion and commitment to your words and to the sounds. And if you're prepared to do that, people want to listen. So it's sort of bringing in that energy and that vocal tone and committing to it and being like, it doesn't really matter if a word is off, really, because I'm going to make people want to listen. So that would be my thought on that. Anything to add, Chris, or should we jump to the next question?
Well, just to add one point, just be you is the first thing here. I think just recognize the moment you step onto stage and they don't think about your accent, the audience has already gathered that, and they're rooting for you. They are respecting you in that moment, because they can't do what you're doing. Most of us, particularly Brits, don't have a second language. So the reality is, you're being brave in the first place. People are rooting for you. They're on your side. And keep it simple, as Philipp said. Don't try and be clever. Just keep your language. Just keep it really simple, and you'll be fine. Love that.
What are the biggest killers of a good story? Oh, good question. Thank you, Shri. Chris, let's have you take that one.
Yeah, I love this question. I think if you look at how most businesses and brands behave, it's the human equivalent of walking into a party, seeing a group of people chatting amongst themselves, walking up to them, interrupting them, and starting to talk about yourself, your car, your status. It's all me, right? What do you do in that instance? You'll take your glass of wine and go and chat to someone else, right? But brands and businesses are doing this all the time. It's all about me. And we are fed up. We don't care how many offices you've got, what your revenues are, how many employees. We just want a good story that's going to involve me. So put your audience into the narrative. But the moment you start, I call it brag marketing. As soon as you start bragging, it's the human equivalent. And you know how you feel about these sorts of people.
I love that. That is such a good metaphor. Thank you. Philipp, over to you.
The biggest killer of a story is too much context. People somehow have the tendency where they think that they need to talk for like 2 minutes to explain where they work, their responsibility, the company's history. Like, none of that is needed. Just go into the challenge as quickly as possible. I usually try to set my context and maybe 1 sentence, 2, 3 sentences. That's it. And then I go to the challenge as quickly as possible. If you can do that, your story will already be completely transformed.
Brilliant. I think both of those are excellent. From me, my perspective is the biggest killer of a story is not being willing to share any heart, any values, any of yourself, if it's your story, any reason. So even if it's not your story, any reason why you would be connected to it. So if we kind of are like, I will not show anything, it's just like, well, why does anyone bother? No one can get engaged. So for me, that would be the biggest killers, but actually, they're all big killers. Okay, I think we have time for one last question, and then we are going to move into the wrap-up phase. So let's have a last question. Where can people find storytelling resources from our LSW webinar team? It's a very good question. Philip, why don't you start from your perspective?
I guess you're asking for specific books or videos, or?
I don't know. I think what we'll do, it's a good question. I want to sort of get to a gritty question for our last one. So we'll all have a think and share some links in the emails that go out, because there are a few different things that we can share. So yeah, brilliant. And then finally, one final question. But this is going to be like one person gets to answer. 30-second response. What's the best way to weave stories into a workshop training? Okay, I think you're both going to want to answer this. So let's have like our 30-second response, starting with you, Chris.
Yeah, I think again, when we're training through our own academy, we're basically inviting the audience to come in and make them the central character of the story. So if you want to get a training narrative across, talk about the problem in the context of the person or the hero that you're trying to reach, and then take them straight from the drama into the solution. So you don't need a long and complicated process. It's story, problem, answer. Love it. Philip, anything to add?
Yeah, I would use a story anytime that you expect a lot of resistance. So when you're like, this one thing usually always gets a lot of pushback, a lot of doubt, well, that's your time to share a story of a previous participant who had that same concern, but then overcame that concern. So yeah, in the times where you need to get buy-in, that's usually the part where you want to include some stories.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. I think it's where you need to have your hook. Why are you actually doing this training? That's articulating your why in a story, very powerful. Brilliant. Okay, so while we're wrapping up, I'd like to invite everybody watching to just put in the comments your takeaway. So something that you're going to use, something that you loved, to share, because we love that share. It's so useful for us, and also good for you to articulate what it is, your one thing that you're taking away. And while everybody's doing that, firstly, I want to say a massive thank you to both of you, Chris and Philip, for sharing your time and your brilliance and your tools and your mastery. I'm sure everyone watching will agree. It's been really, really useful. So good. You're both such masters. So thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
And then we will be sending out an email to everyone today, which will have links to Chris, links to Philip, so you can explore them further. Philip, I know you've written at least 2 books.
3, yes.
3. Written 3 books. So that's obviously some of the resources which we can send a link to. We'll also be sending out a link to a heavily discounted taster session if you want to work with London Speech Workshop and try out what we do on that journey. But also what you might want to do is have a discovery call with either me or Katie, and that's free, and they can tell you about how we can help you as well. Chris, Philip, if people want to work with you, what's available to them? Chris, if you start.
Yeah, if they want to, well, we have our own storytelling academy. If they want to learn more, and that is the Berkeley Storytelling Academy, berkeleypr.com. You'll find all the data and information there if you want more.
Amazing. And Philip?
Yes, so we give storytelling trainings to companies around the world, and you can find us at storylab.co. And also, hey, I put tons of stuff on YouTube. I put a video out there every week, and so just find me, Philipp Humm, and there you will like it a lot.
Amazing. So that probably answers the resources question. So thank you so much, everybody who has come and been here today. Reading out just in the last minute some of these lovely comments. So thank you. Highly valuable session. 6 steps, very cool. I agree. I will definitely use the get out of myself and the catch the ball techniques and improv. brilliant. Storytelling is a skill that can be learnt. Absolutely, it is. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming. And I'm really glad that I hope that you enjoyed it. It looks like everybody really did enjoy it. So thank you so much, everyone. And thank you, Chris, and thank you, Philip.
Thank you very much.